AM 790 Talk and Business presents The Coalition, a weekly 1-hour show that looks at all sides of local, regional, and national news, as well as current events. Join us now for The Coalition.
And yes, we are The Coalition. Loud and proud, issues-driven, outrage porn-free, Super Bowl-free, football deflation-free. We are issues-driven, and we're going to talk about politics today. We will be the only live radio show talking about politics today. You can find us at coalitionradio.us, facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, Coalition_radio at the Mighty Mighty Twitter, and of course the outrage line is at Twitter, PO Taxpayer. Joining me again in the hot seat, my co-host, man about town, socialist legend, Woonsocket agitprop extraordinaire, Dave Fisher. Dave, welcome back to the show.
I wear that moniker with so much pride, Pat. The agitprop, the provocateur. It's something I take seriously and wear proudly.
Taking on apparatchiks across northern Rhode Island, ruining their lives, and, of course, most importantly, their inflated, delusion of grandeur-based self-image. Did you piss anybody off this week?
No, I didn't. The snow had me kind of bound up this week. I had a couple of good blood. Well, the pissing people off is coming, I'm sure, because the Senate rank and file emphasis on rank is falling in line behind Frank Lombardi on this insanely draconian highway blocking bill. Here you go. You want to protest? 60 days in jail. Boom, right off the bat.
There you go. I mean, the Soviets never had it that good. We're going to talk about that. Joining us slightly later in the show is Mark Ward, Communications Director of RI Normal. But Dave, let's talk about this bill. First of all, the important thing is, you know it's a done deal because it's on the fast track. We spent, 2 years analyzing something as minor as the tax structure in Rhode Island. Yet, in the space of, a week and a half, this bill has already been fast-tracked. It's going to be heard at the rise of the Senate this Wednesday, I believe.
Well, and honestly, I don't think I've actually seen the bill in its submitted form. The only information I got on it was a press release that this bill would be introduced.
Right.
So I haven't actually seen it, and I'm actually looking at Frank Lombardi's bills right now, and I'm not seeing.
So we don't know ultimately what format this is going to show up, and then it goes after the. All right, think of if I want to draw a science fiction analogy between the legislative process and the Alien movies. So think about the first Alien movie when a implant was made into one of the spaceship's characters, and ultimately the first alien blew out of his stomach, right? And went and tore the place apart. That's pretty much how legislation is born here in Rhode Island, isn't it?
I think that's a pretty accurate representation of this particular legislation.
All right, so
it's going to kill its host and continue to take over other beings.
Okay. Sort of like most of Rhode Island government. We got to find that clip and post that to the website, coalitionradio.us. But as an aside, shameless self-promotion here, we've added a new portion to the website, haven't we?
We have. We now have a bookstore, an Amazon bookstore, an Amazon anything store on our website.
Right. If you care to support independent radio, if you like what we have, or if you just find us really outrageous, banal, and self-absorbed, yet somehow, much like a driver's ed movie, you can't avert your gaze, all right, you could purchase this, purchase books through there. We've got a
Sally didn't buckle up.
We've got, as we crash through our own personal windshields every week, please make your Amazon purchase there. We've got a highlighted section which includes sections on anarchy, civil disobedience, and
all flavors of political ideology and
orientated, as our former president would say, towards the more nuclear aspect of radical politics. Yeah, so it's up there, coalitionradio.us. But getting to this bill, what's astonishing is, and I guess where I take the most offense is the keyboard patriots that I've run into on Facebook for years seem to have no problem giving up their ability to protest in order to make life efficient.
Yeah, it's the convenience versus justice trade-off. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is. You know, we're willing to trade off the equity of a particular group of people for our convenience, i.e., don't make me late for work.
Right. And if there's any sense of disorder in their day-to-day lives, if we break up that process where you leave your home, you stop and make your daily investment in Dunkin' Donuts, and then proceed mindlessly to whatever occupation you have, listening to outrage porn-driven talk radio, or God knows whatever internet website you happen to be pulling from that's not ours, so it can't be that good. All right, and then you get to work, and as long as you don't interrupt that schedule, if someone interferes in and breaks in and provides some level of uncomfortable political discourse,
right,
it must be stopped.
Well, and I think that this is probably the big difference between how I viewed the protests that shut down highways here and in Boston. I didn't see those as protests against a police state gone mad against a particular group of people. What I saw it as was a group of people getting together to make a statement to us, the regular folks that very well may agree with everything that they're saying, but we just can't get involved in it. You know, we are the good men standing by while evil flourishes. You know, and this, to me, these protests were not about police brutality. They were a call to arms to all of us out there that, don't make our voices heard and let these things go on in our society. Let's be honest. The police are a reflection of ourselves.
Right.
So, unless we start to hold them accountable for what they do, I don't think it's fair to hold protesters accountable for something that's, well within their rights. And if you look at this entire argument, the argument for this bill, if you take the word protesters and substitute it with the word police and police officer, I mean, what they're trying to do to these protesters is exactly the kind of accountability and punishment and like mandatory punishment and investigation that they're asking for in these cases of police on civilian violence.
Right. And what's astonishing to me, and I guess what I was obsessed this week, is I'm going to make I'm going to draw on a corollary that's completely mundane, is the astonishing lack of outrage. There was a great piece in this weekend's Washington Post online where they interviewed Bernie Sanders, who is contemplating a run for the presidency, either as an independent socialist candidate or as on the Democratic ticket. Now, when it comes to the politics of Bernie Sanders, I'm clearly diametrically opposed, but on the other hand, I respect his commitment to the process and his commitment towards raising the bar here in the United States. So I can respect him and disagree with him. What the columnist pointed out, and I thought this was very apt, was you can try and lead a populist revolution a la Bernie Sanders, but you need populist people behind you sharing the same sense of disenfranchisement and outrage. Mm-hmm. And regardless of whether you're libertarian, green, socialist, or progressive, you can't help but notice the extreme swing in individual personal fortunes in this society. Now, and that hasn't occurred because of the free market. If the free market had somehow, quote unquote, failed and allowed individuals' wealth, that top 1%, to grow disproportionately, then I, as a libertarian, would have to shrug my shoulders and go, oops, maybe I was wrong. But ultimately, it's the crony capitalism that has taken over this country, the I know a guy syndrome that is not just here in Rhode Island, but across the nation, that has created this perverse form of market capitalism. It's not free market. It's not what we should be aspiring to.
It's not the free market. It's the fee market.
Right. But what's astonishing about this is that the big lie that somehow trying to create a true free market is anti-capitalist, and getting people, whether they be libertarian or progressive, to buy into that somehow trying to rein in these people who are out of control and have perverted the political system is somehow anti-American. And people have bought into that.
Right.
That's what's disgusting. I don't care whether you're talking about the Koch brothers or you're talking about our favorite international currency trader who supported leftist causes, supported something like SOS, which sought to essentially take over Secretary of States and states nationwide. I don't care whether you're talking about right wing, left wing, whatever. There are certain groups of people who are working the system. They have perverted the system, and they are not supporting free market. They are mouthpieces to it. They are saying they are, and somehow, if I object to that, I'm anti-American, I'm a statist, I'm anti-capitalism. And it's outrageous.
Yeah, proponents of a so-called free market that all they try to do is corner said market.
Yeah, it's free for them.
Yeah.
So there seems to be, and the mundane example I wanted to talk about this week was snowplowing. So, I'm engaging in online trolling because, and by the way, I am getting ready for nationals. I've got to work on my game a little bit. So I was engaging in some online trolling to try and outrage people. And all I listened to is the collective whining, call the wambulance, from people in Providence who clearly have not and are not going to get plowed out. And, they engage in this back and forth and this, there's just outright frustration. So I said to a couple of them, well, what are you going to do about it? Well, what do you mean? Well, I got to tell you, first of all, in Cumberland, they did a hell of a job. But if they hadn't, I would have shown up on the mayor's doorstep, knocked on the door politely, and said, what do the kids say? WTF? What's going on here? So you've got this group of people called, Rhode Islanders, particularly in Providence, who clearly are captives of the system. They refuse to even get upset about the complete absence of any response to a major storm. One guy actually said to me, well, what are we supposed to do, protest? Well, yeah. Hello.
Well, and here's the blowback of austerity, right? This is the blowback of cutting staff, cutting equipment purchases, cutting this, to make some budget mark, some arbitrary budget mark.
Never cutting middle management, by the way.
Of course. You don't cut the guys that are making $120,000 a year. You cut 4 guys that are making $30,000 a year. We see this throughout the entire state where people are taking on multiple jobs within City Hall, within the Department of Public Works, and things fall through the cracks at that point. We had a couple years back when that big storm hit, Woonsocket sent out its plows, and after the previous year where we had no snow, within the first hour, half the city's plows had broken down because they hadn't been maintained over that time because guess what? The city doesn't have a diesel mechanic on staff anymore.
Right. They've got 3 layers of associate mayors, deputies to the assistants, all making the requisite $70,000 a year.
Woonsocket's a very different animal. There's a lot of staff sharing that goes on at City Hall because our staff has really just been cut to the absolute bone.
It's just outrageous to me. And the article was so adroit at pointing out that there's despite the need to be outraged, a desperate need to be outraged, a desperate need to be, quite frankly, pissed off, a desperate need to take to the streets. 2 things have happened. Number one, we have become our own Stockholm, syndrome here in Rhode Island. We have become prisoners of ourselves. And somehow we've been convinced that to complain about it is somehow to display any sense of outrage is poor behavior.
Yeah. I'm starting to think the book 50 Shades of Grey is really about the Rhode Island government and the Rhode Island people and being seduced into submission over a long.
We're at that elegant.
And speaking of books, you can buy books now on our Amazon bookstore on our website.
Right. I'm not thinking 50 Shades of Grey. I'm thinking about a scene from really one of the great film noirs of our lifetime, a movie that really drives an emotional wedge into one's soul. Of course, that would be the movie Animal House and the famous "Please, Sir, May I Have Another." Mm-hmm. And on that, let's go to a message from our new sponsor, Beacon Shipping.
This portion is brought to you by Beacon Shipping Logistics. Heading south for the winter? Don't drive. Take the stress out of your life and let Beacon Shipping Logistics ship your vehicle door to door. Call 855-3-SHIP-IT.
Yes, that's our new sponsor, Beacon Shipping. Again, we thank them for sponsoring independent radio. It takes a certain sense of community to go out there and take a shot at working with folks like us. If it wasn't for independent media in this state, well, if you had to if you had to rely on the Urinal or JAR for your news, oof, think about what this would be like. So, if we're going to talk about that more after the break, but whether it be your local automobile shipping needs,